What do you see when you turn off the lights? The glow from a phone, a street lamp through the curtains. Our world is never truly dark. But imagine a darkness so deep and so total, it felt like a physical presence. In the Middle Ages, the night wasn't empty. It was governed by strange rules, forgotten rituals, and a sleep cycle so different from ours. Modern science is just now catching up to it. What if you could experience that lost world? To understand the real fears and the secret life that began only after the sun went down, stay with us as we pull back the veil. Hello, and welcome to Sleeping Scribe. Tonight, we are not visiting a battlefield or a king's court. Instead, we are embarking on a different kind of journey into a realm that is both familiar and profoundly alien. We are traveling into the past, to a time before the world was conquered by light. We are going to experience what the medieval night was actually like. So find a comfortable position and let the gentle rhythm of this story guide you. Let the world outside your window fade away as we prepare to step into a world lit only by fire and by the moon. The journey begins now with the setting of the sun. Imagine for a moment the world around you, the gentle hum of electricity in the walls, the soft glow from a distant street lamp, the digital clock by your bedside. Our night is never truly dark, never truly silent. It is a managed, tamed, and illuminated thing. But the night we are visiting tonight was a different creature entirely. It was a vast, deep, and untamed ocean of blackness that swallowed the world whole each and every evening. It was a time when darkness was not merely an absence of light, but a powerful presence in itself, one that dictated the rhythms of life, stoked ancient fears, and held its own unique, forgotten secrets. In the next chapters of our story, we will walk through this forgotten world. We will hear the toll of the curfew bell and feel the heavy thud of a city gate being barred for the night. We will huddle by a flickering hearth inside a peasant's cottage and strain our eyes to see by the meager light of a rushlight. We will learn about the strange, segmented way that people used to sleep and explore the waking hours that existed in the heart of the deepest night. This is your invitation to close your eyes, to breathe slowly, and to let your mind drift back across the centuries. Let us discover the true nature of the medieval night together. Our journey begins as the sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and deep purple. For the medieval person, this was not just a beautiful sight, it was a profound and urgent signal. The day, a realm of work, of commerce, and of relative safety, was ending. The sun was the great regulator, the provider of warmth and light, the force that held chaos at bay. Its departure was felt in the bones, a primal shift in the very fabric of existence. The air grows cooler, shadows lengthen and distort familiar shapes, and a sense of haste fills the streets. It is time to get home, time to get behind walls, time to prepare for the reign of darkness. From the tallest church tower, a sound begins to echo across the fields and rooftops. It is the deep, resonant toll of a bell. This is the curfew, a word derived from the Old French couvre-feu, which means, quite literally, cover the fire. This nightly ritual was a fundamental part of medieval urban life, a command that rippled through every household. It was first and foremost a matter of public safety. In cities built of wood and thatch, an unattended ember from a hearth could easily grow into a devastating inferno, consuming entire neighborhoods while the inhabitants slept. The bell was the town's collective act of caution, a reminder to subdue the flames that gave them warmth and cooked their food. But the curfew bell was more than just a fire regulation. It was an auditory wall, marking the official end of the day. It was the sound of the community drawing inward, a signal for the social world to shrink. The bustling marketplace, filled with the shouts of vendors and the haggling of customers, falls silent. Artisans lay down their tools, apprentices close up their master shops, and farmers guide their weary animals back from the fields. The streets begin to empty as people hurry to the security of their own homes. The bell's toll was a clear message, understood by all, that the public, communal life of the day was now over. The night belonged to something else. As the last peal of the curfew bell fades into the twilight, another set of sounds takes over. A creak and groan of massive wooden gates being swung shut by the town guard. The heavy thud of a thick iron bar being dropped into place, sealing the town from the world outside. These gates were the physical barrier between the structured society within and the wild, unknown dangers of the countryside. They were a defense against bandits, raiding parties, or even wolves that might be drawn to the scent of a sleeping town. To be caught outside the gates after curfew was to be left to the mercy of the night, a fate most would go to great lengths to avoid. Inside the walls, a similar ritual is happening on a smaller scale. Heavy wooden doors are bolted from within. Rough shutters are closed over unglazed windows, blocking not only the growing darkness, but also the damp night air, believed to carry sickness and ill humors. The world for a family, which during the day might have encompassed fields, a workshop, or a marketplace, now shrinks to the size of a few small rooms. This act of sealing the home was both practical and deeply psychological. It was a conscious effort to create a small defended island of light and warmth in the vast and indifferent sea of the night. With the world outside secured and silenced, the soundscape transforms completely. The cacophony of human activity gives way to a more subtle and ancient chorus. The listener's ear, not dulled by constant background noise, becomes acutely sensitive. You would hear the whisper of the wind moving through the eaves of the thatched roof, or rattling a loose shutter. You might hear the distant, lonely howl of a dog, or the hoot of an owl on the hunt. From the local monastery, another bell might chime, not a command this time, but a sacred marking of the passage of time, the call for the monks to begin their nightly vigils of prayer. Now let us step inside a typical peasant home and feel the darkness as they did. The central feature, the very heart of this space, is the hearth. It is a simple fire pit, sometimes lined with stone, located in the center of the main room. The smoke winds its way upwards to find a hole in the thatched roof. This fire is everything. It is the primary source of heat, warding off the bone-deep chill of the night. It is the main source of light, casting a dynamic, flickering glow that makes the familiar room seem alive with dancing shadows. It is a place of gathering where the family huddles close together after their evening meal. The light from the fire is precious, but it is also weak and unreliable. It illuminates a small circle, leaving the corners of the room in deep, impenetrable shadow. To see beyond this circle required other means other than simple. The wealthy and nobility or rich merchants might afford candles made of beeswax. These gave off a relatively bright, clean light and a pleasant smell. But for the vast majority, the common folk, such a luxury was unthinkable. Their choice was tallow candles, made from rendered animal fat, which sputtered, smoked, and filled the small, poorly ventilated room with a greasy, unpleasant odor. They were a dim, smelly, and expensive necessity. Even more common than tallow candles were rushlights. A peasant woman would spend time gathering rushes, a type of marsh grass, and peeling them carefully to leave a single thin strip of pith. This pith was then soaked in leftover cooking fat and left to dry. When lit, a rushlight would provide a feeble, smoky light for perhaps 15 to 20 minutes. One would have to make and burn several just to get through a single evening's tasks. This meager light was not for reading or leisure, for most were illiterate anyway. It was for essential, practical tasks, mending a tool, spinning wool, or finding one's way to the sleeping pallet. Life indoors, then, was lived in a state of perpetual twilight. People's eyes would have been far more accustomed to low-light conditions than ours are today. Their other senses would have been heightened. They would navigate their own homes by memory, by touch, and by the subtle cues of sound and smell. The evening was a time for activities that did not require sharp vision. It was a time for storytelling, for passing down oral histories and folklore from one generation to the next. It was a time for prayer, for reciting psalms and catechisms learned by rote. It was a time for the family to be truly together, their world condensed into a single fire-lit space. But what of the world outside those shuttered windows? To venture into the streets of a medieval town at night was to enter another world, a place of profound risk and disorientation. There were no streetlights. The darkness was absolute, a physical presence that seemed to press in from all sides. On a cloudy, moonless night, you could hold your hand up in front of your face and see nothing at all. The very ground beneath your feet was treacherous. The uneven cobblestones or muddy tracks were littered with unseen obstacles, from discarded refuse to the filth that flowed from homes in open drainage ditches. A single misstep could result in a twisted ankle or a fall into something truly unspeakable. This overwhelming darkness made every journey a perilous undertaking. If one absolutely had to travel, they would use a lantern. These were typically made of thin sheets of polished animal horn, which were translucent, set into a wooden or metal frame with a candle inside. A lantern protected the precious flame from the wind, but it cast only a small, shaky pool of light. It illuminated the path just a few feet ahead, while making the surrounding darkness seem even deeper and more menacing. To see a lantern approaching in the distance was a rare and notable event, a tiny spark of humanity moving through the immense black void. Amidst this darkness and danger, there were figures tasked with maintaining a sliver of order. These were the men of the night watch. They were not a professional police force in the modern sense. Often, they were simply citizens, merchants, or craftsmen, fulfilling a civic duty on a rotating basis. Armed with a polearm like a halberd and carrying a lantern, they would patrol the empty streets in small groups. Their primary duty was not so much to fight crime as it was to be a deterrent and a source of assurance. They were the eyes and ears of the sleeping town, a symbol that the community was still guarded, even in its most vulnerable state. The watchmen performed another vital function. They were living clocks. As they walked their prescribed routes, they would call out the hour, their voices echoing in the still night air. 10 of the clock, and all is well. This simple cry served multiple purposes. It let the sleeping citizens know the time, and that the watch was on duty. It also served as a way for different groups of watchmen to keep track of each other's positions throughout the town. And it was a warning to any potential wrongdoer, announcing that authority was present and moving through the streets, breaking the comforting anonymity that the darkness provided to thieves and other criminals. For the night was, undeniably, the domain of the lawless. The darkness was a perfect cloak for crime. Burglars, cutpurses, and thugs could operate with a much lower chance of being seen or identified. The empty streets belonged to them, and any honest person caught out alone was an easy target. The fear of nocturnal crime was pervasive and very real. The tales and ballads of the time are filled with stories of benighted travelers being robbed, or worse. This is why the barring of doors was so important, and why the idea of leaving the safety of one's home after dark was viewed with such dread. The night held terrors that were all too human. Now we turn to the most intimate aspect of the medieval night, the act of sleep itself. And here we find one of the most fascinating differences between their world and ours. For most people in the Middle Ages, and indeed up until the Industrial Revolution, sleep was not a single unbroken event. Instead, it was divided into two distinct phases, a practice now known as segmented or biphasic sleep. This was not a choice, but a natural biological response to the long hours of darkness that governed their lives. The rhythm of their rest was fundamentally different from the 8-hour block we aspire to today. The evening would begin with what was known as the first sleep, or in Latin, primo somno. Shortly after the evening meal, and a few chores by the fireside, the family would retire. This was not late by our standards, perhaps around 9 or 10 in the evening. They would fall asleep for a stretch of about 3 to 4 hours. This first sleep was often deep and restorative, a recovery from the hard physical labor of the day. They would sleep soundly, wrapped in woolen blankets on straw-filled mattresses, their bodies sinking into a much-needed period of rest as the fire in the hearth slowly died down to glowing embers. Then, sometime after midnight, a natural and expected change would occur. People would begin to wake up. This was not insomnia. It was not a disorder. It was a normal part of the nightly cycle. They entered a strange and unique period of gentle, quiet wakefulness, a state that lasted for an hour or two. The French called it dorveil, a word that elegantly combines dormir and veiler. This waking watch was a liminal state, a time of quiet consciousness suspended in the very heart of the deep night. It was a private, introspective period, unlike any part of the busy, communal day. What did people do during this waking period? The answer is as varied as human nature itself. For the devout, this was a sacred time. The quiet and solitude were perfect for prayer and religious contemplation. It was an opportunity to recite psalms, to meditate on the state of one's soul, or, if one was literate and could afford the light, to read from a book of hours. The Church itself recognized this period, scheduling specific prayers and services, known as matins and lauds, to take place during this nocturnal watch. For many, the dorveil was a time to connect with the divine, away from the distractions of the world. For the more practically minded, this was a time for quiet chores. A woman might get up to check on a sleeping child, or to stir the embers of the fire and add a new log to ensure it wouldn't go out completely by morning. A farmer might go outside to check on his livestock, listening for any signs of distress. It was also a time to use the chamber pot, or to take a simple remedy for an ailment. These were small, necessary tasks performed in the hushed quiet of a sleeping household, preserving the peace of the night while preparing for the day to come. This period of wakefulness was also recognized as an ideal time for intimacy. Medical texts and marital advice from the period often suggested that the time after the first sleep was the best for marital relations. It was seen as a time when couples were rested from the day's labors and not yet anxious about the coming morning's work. The privacy and quiet of the night offered a rare opportunity for connection. It was a calm, relaxed interval, free from the pressures of the day, a time for couples to talk and be close in a way that the crowded, busy daylight hours rarely permitted. And for many, the dorveil was simply a time to be. It was a time to lie in bed in the quiet darkness and let the mind wander. It was a time to think, to reflect on the events of the previous day, or to plan for the one to come. It was a time to interpret the dreams from the first sleep, which were often considered to be significant or prophetic. This period of quiet, unstimulated wakefulness is something almost entirely lost to us in the modern age. It was a built-in time for introspection, a gift of the long, dark, pre-industrial night. After an hour or two of this quiet wakefulness, people would feel a natural sleepiness return. They would settle back down into their beds for their second sleep, which would last until the first light of dawn. This second sleep was often described as being lighter and filled with more vivid dreams. When they awoke in the morning, they would feel fully rested. Their night naturally divided into 2 cycles of sleep, punctuated by a period of peaceful consciousness. This entire rhythm, so alien to us, was for them the simple, unquestioned, and natural way of experiencing the night. Beyond the physical realities of darkness and sleep, we must understand that the medieval night was also a landscape of the mind, a place filled with spiritual and supernatural significance. The darkness was not empty. To the medieval imagination, The veil between the physical world and the spirit world grew thin after sunset. The night was a time when otherworldly forces, both benevolent and malevolent, were believed to walk the earth. This belief was not a fringe superstition. It was a deeply ingrained part of the common worldview, shaping how everyone, from the lowest peasant to the highest lord, experienced the hours of darkness. The night was populated by a host of unseen entities. There was a pervasive fear of ghosts, the restless souls of the dead who were believed to return to their former homes or to wander lonely roads. There was a terror of demons who were thought to use the cover of darkness to tempt the faithful into sin or to torment them in their sleep. Folklore was rich with tales of other creatures, goblins, sprites, and fairies who might play tricks on travelers or steal away infants. These were not just characters in stories. They were considered real and present dangers, another compelling reason to stay securely indoors. In the face of these supernatural threats, faith was the primary shield. Prayer was a form of spiritual armor. Nightly prayers were not just a ritual of devotion, but a practical act of self-preservation. People would ask for protection from God and the saints, making the sign of the cross over their beds and doorways to ward off evil spirits. Religious objects, such as crucifixes, holy water, or a saint's relic, were kept in the home as tangible forms of divine protection. The ringing of the monastery bells throughout the night served as a constant holy sound, a sonic barrier that was believed to push back against the forces of darkness. Dreams experienced during the two sleeps were also seen through this supernatural lens. A dream could be a message from God, a divine vision, or a prophecy, but it could also be a deception sent by the devil, a tempting illusion designed to lead the soul astray. The nightmare, in particular, was often interpreted not as a product of the mind, but as a literal, physical assault by a malevolent spirit, such as a mare or an incubus, that would sit upon the sleeper's chest, causing terror and suffocation. Understanding and interpreting dreams was a serious matter, a way of navigating the spiritual currents that flowed through the night. Thus, the medieval night was a time of deep duality. It was a time for rest, but also a time of heightened spiritual danger. It was a time for quiet contemplation, but also a time of deep-seated fear. The darkness held both the peace of God and the terror of demons. To survive the night was to have successfully navigated not just the physical darkness, but the spiritual landscape as well. Every sunrise was, in a small way, a victory. It was a confirmation that the light had returned, that the forces of order had once again triumphed over the chaos of the night. And so the first faint hint of gray begins to appear on the eastern horizon. This is the false dawn, a precursor to the main event. In the profound silence, a new sound emerges, the one that everyone has been waiting for, the crowing of a rooster. This single familiar cry is a powerful symbol of hope and renewal. It is the announcement that the long reign of darkness is finally breaking. Soon after, the morning bells of the church and monastery begin to ring, a joyful, energetic sound that is a world away from the solemn toll of the curfew. The night has been weathered, and the world is about to be reborn. With the coming of the light, the world begins to expand once more. Inside the home, shutters are thrown open, letting in the cool, fresh morning air and the growing light. The heavy bar is lifted from the door. Outside, the great gates of the town creak open, reconnecting the community with the fields and the wider world. The streets slowly begin to fill with life as people emerge from their homes, blinking in the new day. The sounds of commerce, of artisans' hammers, and of human conversation gradually return, washing away the silence of the night. The day has begun. We have journeyed through a world that is gone, a night that was deeper, quieter, more dangerous, and perhaps more magical than our own. We have seen how darkness shaped the very rhythm of life, creating a world of segmented sleep and firelit intimacy. We have felt the fear of the unseen, both human and supernatural, that lurked in the absolute blackness. Their night was a presence to be respected, a force to be endured, and a spiritual space to be navigated. As we return to our own time, to our own softly lit rooms, we can perhaps appreciate the profound peace our ancestors felt at the simple, glorious sight of the rising sun. If you have enjoyed this journey into the past, a quiet like or subscription is always deeply appreciated and helps others find our little corner of history. Feel free to share a thought in the comments below, perhaps about what surprised you most about the night. And so, our main story of the medieval night draws to a close. But the past is full of quiet corners to explore. As we settle into deeper rest, let your mind drift with us as we now consider the dreams and nightmares that filled those long hours of sleep and what our ancestors believed they truly meant. Stay with us as the story continues. And so, our journey through the physical night concludes. We leave behind the cobbled streets, the shuttered windows, and the dying embers in the hearth. We cross a new threshold now, not one of wood or stone, but of consciousness itself. A world of sleep. For our ancestors, this was not an empty void, not a simple pause between days. It was a destination, a landscape of the mind as real and as vital as the waking world. It was a place of profound meaning, a hidden realm where the greatest truths and the most dangerous lies could be revealed to the vulnerable, sleeping soul. Day. Modern mind seeks to understand dreams through the lens of science, as the brain's way of processing memory and emotion. But the medieval mind saw it very differently. To them, a dream was a bridge. It was a place where the veil between heaven and earth, between the body and the spirit, grew thin. It was a canvas upon which God could paint a message, where the devil could set his clever traps, and where the body itself could whisper the secrets of its own health or sickness. The art of living well required one to also understand the art of dreaming well. So let us settle deeper now into a state of quiet listening. Imagine we are in a still ancient library, the air thick with the scent of old paper and beeswax. Before us lies a heavy, leather-bound volume. It is the Book of Dreams. Its pages hold the collected wisdom, the fears, and the hopes of a world that took its inner life with the utmost seriousness. Let us open this ancient book together and, with a quiet mind, learn to read its forgotten language. Our first chapter concerns the most sought-after dream of all, the dream that came as a message from the divine ... in the medieval world. The idea that God spoke through dreams was not a fringe belief. It was a foundational truth, supported by the highest authority, the Holy Bible itself. The sacred texts were filled with stories of God's chosen people being guided by their slumber. They knew of Joseph, whose dreams of sheaves and stars foretold his rise to power in Egypt. They knew of Jacob, who dreamt of a great ladder reaching to heaven, with angels ascending and descending upon it. They knew of the Magi, the wise men from the east, who were warned in a dream not to return to the treacherous King Herod. These were not mere stories. They were proof that God had a direct line to the heart of the sleeper. ... This belief saturated the spiritual life of the age. The lives of the saints, stories told and retold in every church and village, were rich with tales of divine, nocturnal guidance. People would have heard the story of St. Patrick, who, after being taken from his home as a slave, dreamt of a ship that was waiting to take him to freedom. It was this dream that set him on his path. They would know of the Roman Emperor Constantine, who, on the eve of a decisive battle, dreamt of a cross in the sky with the words, "In this sign you shall conquer." He ordered the symbol painted on his soldiers' shields, and his subsequent victory changed the course of history, paving the way for a Christian empire. ... These dreams were seen as profound gifts, moments where the eternal touched the temporal. They could be a call to action, a divine command to undertake a great quest or to change one's life. A young woman might dream of a shining figure beckoning her towards a convent and see it as a true calling to a life of devotion. A knight might dream of his patron saint offering a word of encouragement before a tournament or a battle. These were not flights of fancy. They were treated with immense gravity as direct interventions from heaven, moments of grace bestowed upon a sleeping world. It was a comforting thought, wasn't it? The idea that the most profound guidance might come when we are at our most. Still ... However, divine dreams were rarely straightforward. God, it was believed, often spoke in the language of allegory and symbol. A dream was not a simple statement, but a sacred puzzle, a spiritual riddle to be carefully unwrapped. To dream of a mighty oak tree could symbolize the church, or a powerful king. To dream of a lamb might represent Christ, or innocence, or a coming sacrifice. The meaning was layered, contextual, and often hidden from the untrained mind. Understanding these holy messages was a skill, a form of spiritual scholarship that required both wisdom and piety. ... This is where the learned clergy played a crucial role. A king or a powerful nobleman, troubled by a potent dream, would not simply dismiss it. He would summon his chaplain or a respected abbot from a nearby monastery. The dreamer would recount the vision in detail, and the cleric, drawing upon his knowledge of scripture, of theology, and of the established lexicon of dream symbols, would offer an interpretation. To correctly interpret a divine dream was to have a glimpse into God's plan. To misinterpret it, however, could lead to disaster. The stakes were incredibly high. This practice trickled down through society. While a common peasant could not summon an abbot, he could certainly speak to his local parish priest. A strange or powerful dream would be shared, discussed, and considered. The priest might offer a simple interpretation, or perhaps just a prayer, but the dream was never treated as meaningless. It was acknowledged as a significant event in the spiritual life of the individual. This shared belief created a world where the inner landscape of every person, no matter their station, was seen as a potential stage for divine revelation. Even the very act of building a great cathedral could be inspired by a dream. There are many accounts of bishops or monks dreaming of the exact location where a new church should be built, sometimes being led there by a vision of a white deer or an angel. These founding legends became part of the cathedral's story, a testament to its divine origin. A dream, in this context, was the first stone laid, the spiritual blueprint from which the physical structure would rise. It cemented the belief that God was not a distant creator, but an active architect, shaping the world through the visions of his sleeping servants. Now, let us turn a new page in our book of dreams. We move from the realm of the soul to the realm of the body. For in the medieval mind, dreams were not only messages from God, but also dispatches from within. They were seen as a direct reflection of a person's physical health, a diagnostic chart that could be read by a skilled physician. To understand these dreams, we must first understand the medical theory that dominated the era for over 1,000 years. The doctrine of the 4-HUMORS. This ancient theory, inherited from the Greeks, held that the human body was composed of 4 primary fluids or humors. These were blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each humor was associated with an element, a season, and a particular quality. Blood was linked to air, spring, and was seen as hot and moist. Phlegm was linked to water, winter, and was cold and moist. Yellow bile was the humor of fire, summer, and was hot and dry. And finally, black bile was linked to earth, autumn, and was considered cold and dry. A person's health and temperament were believed to be determined by the balance of these 4 fluids. If the humors were in perfect equilibrium, the person was healthy and of a balanced disposition. But if one humor became too dominant or superabundant, it would lead to sickness and a corresponding shift in personality. A person with too much blood was sanguine, cheerful, optimistic, and rosy-cheeked. Too much phlegm made one phlegmatic, calm, slow, and unemotional. An excess of yellow bile resulted in a choleric temperament, fiery, angry, and ambitious. And too much black bile made one melancholic, sad, depressive, and introspective. So where do dreams fit into this medical framework? Medieval physicians believed that during sleep, the body's inner processes continued and the dominant humor would boil, producing vapors that would rise to the brain and create dream images. Therefore, the content of a person's dreams was a direct and invaluable clue to their internal humoral state. A doctor would ask a patient not only about their aches and pains, but in great detail about the visions that visited them in the night. The dream was a symptom, as telling as a fever or a cough ... Let us imagine a person who is sanguine, their blood being the dominant humor. Or perhaps they have a fever, which was seen as the body cooking its own blood. Their dreams, according to the theory, would be pleasant and vibrant. They would dream of feasts and parties, of dancing and singing. They might dream of beautiful gardens in the springtime, filled with red flowers. They would dream of flying, of success, and of love. These were the dreams of a body in a hot and moist state, reflecting warmth, joy, and vitality. A physician, hearing of such dreams, would be reassured about the patient's strong constitution. Now, consider a person with an excess of phlegm, the cold and moist humor. Their dreams would be watery and indistinct. They would dream of rain and fog, of mist rolling over a still lake. They might dream of swimming or fishing, or even of drowning in slow, cold water. They might dream of winter landscapes, of snow and ice. These dreams, lacking in energy and passion, were a clear sign to the medieval doctor that the phlegmatic humor was out of balance. The prescribed treatment would involve things believed to be hot and dry, such as certain spices in there, food to counteract the body's inner chill. A person suffering from an excess of yellow bile, the hot and dry humor, would have dreams that were violent and agitated. This was the choleric temperament. Their nights would be filled with fire, with arguments, and with images of battle. They might dream of lightning striking, of buildings burning, or of wild, angry beasts. The color yellow would be prominent. These dreams were a sign of internal heat and aggression, a body out of balance with anger and ambition. A physician might prescribe calming, cooling herbs, and a diet of cold foods like cucumber or melon to quench this inner fire. Finally, we come to the most feared humor, black bile, which produced the melancholic state. These dreams were dark, heavy, and filled with despair. A melancholic person would dream of falling into pits, of being buried in the earth, or of wandering through dark, empty landscapes. They would dream of funerals, of loss, and of deep, inconsolable sadness. The color black would dominate their nocturnal visions. To the medieval doctor, these dreams were a perilous sign, a reflection of a soul and body sinking into a cold, dry state of depression. It was a condition treated with great seriousness, often with recommendations for music, pleasant company, and foods that might lighten the spirit. Let us picture the scene. A physician, perhaps a learned man trained in the great schools of Salerno or Montpellier, sits by the bedside of a wealthy merchant. The room is dim, the air thick with the scent of medicinal herbs. The physician feels the patient's pulse, examines his tongue, but his most important questions are about the night. "Tell me of your dreams," he would say, his voice low and serious. "Did you see fire or water? Were you flying or falling? What colors did you see? The patient's answers would be recorded and considered as carefully as any physical symptom, guiding the physician's hand in creating a treatment to restore the delicate, essential balance of the HUMORS ... We turn the page once more in our book of dreams, and the script within grows darker. We enter a chapter filled with fear and caution. For the medieval mind, the dreaming soul was open and vulnerable. And if God could send a vision to guide it, then it was a terrifying certainty that his adversary, the devil, could also send a dream to lead it astray. Sleep was not just a time for revelation or diagnosis. It was a spiritual battleground. Every night, the soul was at risk, and the devil was a master of using dreams as his chosen weapon. The most insidious of these demonic dreams were not the terrifying ones. They were the beautiful ones. The devil, it was believed, was a great deceiver, capable of appearing as an angel of light. He could send a dream filled with glorious visions, with heavenly music, and with praise for the dreamer's piety. A monk might dream that an angel is congratulating him on his fasting and his prayers. But this was a trap. The dream was designed not to encourage, but to instill a sense of spiritual pride, the deadliest of the 7 sins. To believe oneself holier than others was to fall right into the devil's snare. Theologians and writers of the period warned constantly against this danger. They told the story of St. Jerome, a great scholar, who in a dream was dragged before the throne of judgment. "Who are you?" the judge demanded. "I am a Christian," Jerome replied. But the judge thundered back, "You lie. You are a follower of Cicero, not of Christ." Jerome had loved the beautiful language of the pagan writer Cicero, and the dream was a stark warning that this worldly attachment was endangering his soul. The story served as a powerful lesson. Even noble pursuits could become idols, and the devil would use your own passions against you in your dreams. Distinguishing between a truly divine dream and a demonic deception was a matter of intense anxiety. How could one know for sure? The guidance offered by clerical writers was subtle. A dream from God, they said, would arrive gently and leave the soul in a state of deep, humble peace. A dream from the devil, even if it seemed beautiful, would arrive with a sense of agitation and would leave the soul feeling proud, anxious, or unsettled. The dreamer was urged to examine their own emotional reaction to the dream as much as its content. It was a perilous and uncertain task. Now, we must speak of the true terror of the night, the experience known as the nightmare. For our ancestors, this was not simply a bad dream. The word itself reveals its original meaning. The mare was a specific malevolent entity, an evil spirit or a witch in supernatural form. The nightmare was a physical assault. The sleeper would awaken, paralyzed and unable to move or cry out, while feeling a crushing weight on their chest, stealing their breath. Today, we call this sleep paralysis, a neurological event. To them, it was terrifyingly real. The mare was. Sitting on them, This belief was universal across Europe, a deeply rooted piece of folklore. The mare was a nocturnal predator. She would enter the home through a keyhole or a crack in the wall and seek out her sleeping victim. The experience was described with frightening consistency. The feeling of being awake but frozen, the sense of a hostile presence in the room, the suffocating pressure, the overwhelming terror. It was an attack on the body and the soul, and it left the victim exhausted and deeply shaken, certain they had survived a supernatural violation. It was a very real fear. Every time one closed their eyes, ghostly related to the mare were two other nocturnal predators of the soul, the incubus and the succubus. These were demonic spirits who were believed to visit sleepers in the night to engage in phantom intimacy. The incubus was a male demon who would visit women, while the succubus took a female form to visit men. These encounters were not seen as erotic fantasies. They were terrifying, demonic assaults designed to tempt the sleeper into the sin of lust, to corrupt their soul, and to drain them of their vital energy. Waking from such a dream would fill a person with shame and a deep fear for their spiritual salvation. For those of you still listening, still journeying with me through this dark chapter, take a moment to notice the gentle, easy rhythm of your own breathing. Feel the rise and fall of your chest. It is a simple, peaceful act, an act that our ancestors prayed to be able to keep through the long, uncertain night as they lay in fear of these breathless, spiritual encounters. Their nights were not always peaceful, and their prayers for a quiet rest were filled with a gravity we can now perhaps better understand. Faced with such terrifying nocturnal threats, people were not helpless. They had an arsenal of folk magic and Christian ritual to protect themselves as they slept. These were acts of practical magic, woven into the fabric of daily life. A common protection was to place iron, such as a knife or a pair of scissors, under the pillow, as it was believed that evil spirits could not abide the metal. Another practice was to meticulously arrange one's shoes by the bedside, pointing away from the bed, in the belief that the mare would be confused and unable to approach. Herbs also played a powerful role in warding off nightmares. The most potent of these was St. John's wort, a plant believed to have holy properties. It would be hung over beds or windows to form a protective barrier against witches and demons. Other charms might include specific arrangements of stones, or a witch bottle filled with sharp objects and personal items, designed to trap any malevolent spirit that might try to enter the home. These were not superstitions in our sense of the word. They were the practical tools of spiritual self-defense. Above all, the primary defense was faith. The sign of the cross was made over the bed before sleeping. A specific prayer, asking for protection from all the terrors of the night, was recited devoutly. People would pray to specific saints known for their power against evil spirits, like St. Christopher or St. Benedict. The constant, distant ringing of the monastery bells throughout the night was more than a timekeeper. It was a blanket of holy sound, a sonic shield that pushed back against the darkness and the things that moved within it, offering reassurance. To the sleeping souls of the faithful ... And so we gently close this dark and heavy book of dreams. We have traveled far into the inner world of our ancestors. We have seen a landscape where dreams were a direct line to the heavens, a diagnostic chart for the body, and a battleground for the immortal soul. Their nocturnal visions were not trivial. They were consequential. They could start a quest, diagnose a fever, or signal a demonic attack. The world of sleep was as vibrant, as meaningful, and as dangerous as the world of the waking ... In our modern age, we have largely disenchanted the night. We have explained the dream, categorized its phases, and analyzed its psychological function. We have, in many ways, tamed the landscape of sleep. This has brought us a certain kind of peace, a freedom from the terrors of the mar and the mass deceptions of the devil. But it is worth reflecting on what might have been lost. We have lost the sense that our inner world is a place of profound mystery, a place where we might, just might, touch the face of the divine ... And so we close the book of dreams, letting the quiet mysteries of the mind settle and dissolve into the stillness around you. The past, however, is a library of infinite books, each with its own story to tell, its own world to explore. As you continue to drift deeper into rest, let your mind remain open and at peace. Be ready for the next story that awaits in the quiet. Corners of History, a story that will find you when the time is right. For now, simply rest. Let the silence hold you. And sleep. Having journeyed through the great, shifting landscapes of the dreaming mind, let us now return to the waking world, but only for a moment. We will not go back to the public square or the open road, but to the most private and vulnerable of spaces, the bedchamber at the edge of night. Here, in this humble room, another kind of history unfolded. It was a history without dates or kings, a quiet story told in whispers and small, repeated gestures. It was the story of how our ancestors made their beds, not just with straw and wool, but with hope and belief ... The medieval bed was more than a place to rest a weary body. It was an island, a small raft adrift on the vast, dark ocean of the night. And this ocean, as we have learned, was filled with unseen currents and potential threats. The bedchamber was a fortress, and its occupant the sole defender of its walls. The fortifications used, however, were not of stone and mortar. They were woven from folklore, from faith, and from the gentle power of practical magic. This was a magic of protection, not of power, designed to create a sanctuary for the sleeping soul ... So, let us cross the threshold into this quiet room. The fire in the hearth has been covered, and the only light is from a single flickering rushlight. The air is cool and still. Here we will learn of history's quietest rituals, the forgotten practices our ancestors used to weave a blanket, of safety around their sleep. We will explore the tangible hopes they placed in stone and metal, the fragrant peace they sought from herbs and flowers, and the profound power they found in a whispered word. This is the final chapter of our journey, the story of sealing the chamber of rest ... Our exploration begins with the very bones of the earth, with metal and stone. In the folklore of the medieval world, one metal stood above all others as a shield against the supernatural iron. Iron was the metal of civilization. It was born of the earth, but transformed by human hands in the fire of the forge. It was the metal of the plowshare that broke the soil, the axe that cleared the forest and hide, the sword that defended the realm. This connection to human strength and ingenuity made it a powerful ward against the chaotic, untamed forces of the other world, the world of spirits, fairies, and witches. The belief was simple and absolute. Evil things could not abide the touch of cold iron. The term itself suggests something pure, unyielding, and anathema to the shifting, ethereal nature of spirits. And so, iron became the first line of defense for the bedchamber. The most common practice was to place an iron knife under the mattress or pillow. It was a simple, potent charm. The blade did not need to be grand. Even a small, worn-out paring knife would suffice. Its mere presence was a silent warning, a hidden guard that watched over the sleeper through the night. In some regions, a larger blade, like a reaping hook or a small scythe, might be used. Its curved shape was thought to be particularly effective catching evil spirits or nightmares. It would be laid flat beneath the bed, its sharp edge a symbolic barrier that no malevolent force could cross. This practice reveals a mindset where the tools of the workday, the very implements of survival and sustenance, were imbued with a second spiritual purpose. The tool that harvested the wheat by day could just as easily guard the soul by night. Another powerful iron ward was the horseshoe. Nailed to a door, it was a universal symbol of good luck and protection. But for it to be effective, folklore dictated that it must be placed correctly. Most believed it should be hung with the two ends pointing up, forming a U shape. This way, it would catch and hold all the good luck that came to the household. If it were hung upside gabled, with the ends pointing down, it was thought that all the good luck would run out. A horseshoe found on the road was considered especially lucky, as it had already absorbed the strength of the horse and the spirit of the journey. While iron was the king of protective metals, certain stones also held a special power. These were known as apotropaic stones, from the Greek word for turning away evil. They were not necessarily precious gems, but stones with unique natural properties. The most sought after of these was the hagstone. This was typically a small weathered stone, often found by a river or the sea, which had a natural hole running all the way through it. This hole was created over centuries by the patient action of running water. The hagstone was a powerful amulet against witches, and specifically the night hag or Mari that we spoke of in our last chapter. It was believed that magic, especially evil magic, could not pass through the naturally formed hole. The stone would be tied to a cord, often a red one for added protection, and hung over the head of the bed. It acted as a spiritual filter, a trap for any nightmare or malevolent spirit that might try to approach the sleeper. A person looking through the hole was even said to be able to see fairies or other spirits that were normally invisible. Flint was another stone valued for its protective qualities. Its primary association was with fire. The ability to strike two pieces of flint together and create a spark was a form of magic in itself, a creation of light and heat from cold stone. This latent fire was believed to be a powerful deterrent to creatures of darkness who naturally shunned the light. A piece of flint, perhaps an old arrowhead found in a field, would be placed on a windowsill or over the door, its fiery potential serving as a silent guardian against the encroaching dark. Finally, there was jet. This deep black fossilized wood, often mistaken for stone, was prized for its ability to absorb negativity. It was smooth and warm to the touch, and when polished, it held a deep, mysterious luster. Jet was often worn as a protective amulet during the day, but pieces of it could also be placed in the bedchamber. Its purpose was not to actively repel evil like iron, but to act as a spiritual sponge, quietly drawing in any harmful energies or ill intentions, neutralizing them within its ancient, dark form, and leaving the atmosphere of the room clean and peaceful. It is a simple, grounding thought to find a sense of safety in the very substance of the earth. A quiet strength to hold as you sink deeper into your own place of rest. Now we leave the mineral kingdom and turn to the living, breathing world of plants. If iron and stone formed the hard outer defenses of the chamber, then herbs and woods were the soft, fragrant inner lining. The line between medicine, magic, and folklore was beautifully blurred in the medieval garden. Every plant had its physical use, but many also had a spiritual purpose, a secret soul that could be called upon to soothe the mind and protect the spirit. Preparing the bedchamber often involved creating a tapestry of these sacred, protective scents. First, among the guardian herbs was St. John's wort. With its cheerful yellow flowers that seemed to capture the sunlight, it was considered one of the most powerful plants for chasing away demons and darkness. Its potency was believed to be at its peak during the summer solstice, around the feast day of its namesake, St. John the Baptist. Families would go out to gather it on St. John's Eve, and bunches of it would be hung over doors, windows, and above the bed. Its very presence was a bulwark against evil, a splash of summer sun held fast against the deepest night. The belief in its power was profound. It was thought to prevent nightmares, to ward off witches, and to protect the household from lightning and fire. The small, translucent dots on its leaves were sometimes said to be holes left by a needle the devil used to try and destroy its power. But he failed. To sleep in a room protected by St. John's wort was to sleep in a space cleansed of spiritual harm, a space where only good things could enter. Its slightly piney, balsamic scent would have been a familiar comfort in many medieval homes. Another powerful protector was the rowan tree, also known as the mountain ash. With its bright red berries, a color long associated with life and protection, the rowan was the quintessential anti-witching tree. A walking stick made of rowan wood was the safest staff for a nighttime journey. A sprig of it, hung over a cradle, would protect a baby from being stolen by fairies. In the bedchamber, small equal-armed crosses would be made from rowan twigs, bound together with red thread. These would be placed in the thatched roof above the bed, or tucked into the bed frame itself, a silent, potent charm against all forms of malevolent magic. The magic of the rowan was one of active defense. It did not just soothe, it repelled. Folklore told that no evil sorcery could take hold in the presence of the rowan tree. Its protection was so deeply trusted that it was often planted by the door of a new house to serve as a lifelong guardian for the family within. To have a piece of its wood in your bedchamber was to have a fragment of this ancient, vigilant spirit watching over you as you slept, ensuring that your rest would be undisturbed by any outside enchantment. While some herbs were for defense, others were primarily for peace. Lavender, with its calming floral scent, was a favorite for the bedchamber. It was known to soothe anxieties, ease a troubled mind, and encourage a gentle passage into sleep. But its purpose was twofold. Its clean, pleasant aroma was also believed to be disliked by evil spirits, who preferred foul or stagnant air. So lavender worked on two fronts. It calmed the sleeper from within, while gently purifying the space around them. Small linen bags filled with dried lavender flowers would be tucked inside a pillow or placed among the alongside lavender. Chamomile was another gentle friend of the sleeper. Its small daisy-like flowers, when dried, released a sweet apple-like fragrance. It was known to bring tranquility and to promote pleasant dreams. Often, lavender and chamomile would be blended together in a sleep pillow, a small cushion filled with a mixture of calming herbs. A person would inhale the gentle, soothing scents as they drifted off to sleep. This was a form of ancient aromatherapy, using the soul of the plants to calm the soul of the person, creating an atmosphere of deep, floral peace. One final herb deserves mention: the mysterious mugwort. This plant was deeply associated with dreams, but in a more active way. It was known as a dream herb, believed not only to protect the sleeper, but also to enhance and clarify their dreams. For someone hoping for a prophetic dream or a divine message, mugwort was the herb of choice. It would be placed under the pillow, not to bring a dreamless sleep, but to make the dream world more vivid and memorable. It was a tool for those who wished to journey consciously in their sleep, a guide for the traveler in the landscapes of the mind. So the bedchamber becomes a garden of gentle magic. The sharp scent of St. John's wort hangs by the window. Rowan cross is tucked into the wall. A pillow releases the calming perfume of lavender and chamomile with every movement. These were not just pleasant smells. They were layers of intention, a fragrant shield woven from the leaves and flowers of the earth. Each scent was a prayer, each herb a guardian, working together to create a sanctuary where the body and spirit could find true, restorative rest. We have fortified the chamber with stone, iron, and herbs. Now we come to the final, most personal layer of protection, the one that required no object, only breath and belief. This was the magic of the spoken word, the whispered charm, the recited prayer. In a world where most people were illiterate, the spoken word held immense power. A rhyming verse, a sacred name, or a traditional blessing was not just a collection of sounds. It was an active force, a spell of protection that could create an invisible, impenetrable wall around the sleeper. Many of these were folk prayers, passed down through generations, blending Christian faith with much older folk traditions. One of the most famous and widespread was the White Paternoster. While many versions existed, they shared a similar theme. A person lying in bed would recite a simple rhyming verse, calling for protection. It might go something like this: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, bless the bed that I lie on. 4 corners to my bed, 4 angels round my head. 1 to watch and 1 to pray, and 2 to bear my soul away. Double quotes. Let us gently unwrap this symbol. Prayer. It begins by invoking the 4 evangelists, grounding the charm in the authority of the Gospels. It then maps this sacred protection onto the physical space of the bed, assigning a guardian to each of the 4 posts. This transforms the simple bed into a holy fortress. Finally, it addresses the ultimate vulnerability of sleep, which was seen as a small death, by asking the angels to protect the soul on its nightly journey. It is a charm of immense comfort, covering all a person's fears in just a few simple, memorable lines. There were countless other charms as well, often for very specific threats. A person might whisper a short verse against the mare, or a charm against thieves in the night. A common feature of these charms was repetition. A verse might be repeated 3 times in honor of the Holy Trinity to increase its power. The act of speaking the words aloud, of giving them breath and voice in the quiet room, was what activated their magic. The vibrations of the sound were thought to create a real, tangible barrier that no evil could cross. Alongside these folk charms, the official prayers of the church were also used as powerful protective rites. The Lord's Prayer, the Pater Noster, was the most powerful of all. Its holy words, taught by Christ himself, were believed to be the ultimate shield against any form of evil. A person might recite it several times while preparing for bed. The Hail Mary, or Ave Maria, was another favorite, calling upon the protection of the Holy Mother, who was seen as a powerful and compassionate guardian for all of humanity. These prayers connected the individual's small chamber to the vast, protective power of the universal church. For those still listening, still following this journey into the quiet rituals of the past, think for a moment of the power of a soothing word, a gentle phrase repeated in the quiet to bring comfort and peace. A line from a beloved poem, a simple mantra, or a quiet prayer. This is a form of gentle magic we still know and still use today. It is the magic of the human voice, calming the human heart in the face of the dark. The final ritual of the night. was one of silent, powerful action. It was the making of the sacred sign, the sign of the cross. This was the ultimate seal of protection, an act that invoked the full power of the Christian faith in a single gesture. A person would first make the sign over their own body, touching their forehead, their chest, then each shoulder, consecrating themselves to God's protection. It was a physical prayer, a reminder that their own body was a temple of the Holy Spirit. But the blessing did not stop there. A parent would then trace the sign of the cross with their thumb on the forehead of each sleeping child. It was a tender, silent blessing, a transfer of protection from parent to child. The gesture was slow, deliberate, and full of love. It was a promise to the child and a prayer to God that they would be kept safe from all harm, both seen and unseen, until the morning light returned to the world. Then the blessing would extend to the room itself. The person would face the door and make the sign of the cross in the air, sealing it against any intruder, physical or spiritual. They would do the same for each window. This series of gestures transformed the simple room into a consecrated space, a temporary chapel. It was a conscious act of drawing a sacred boundary, a holy circle of safety, with the sleeper at its very center. Only after the signs were made and the room was spiritually sealed could one finally surrender to sleep. Let us imagine for a moment the scene in its entirety. The horseshoe is over the door. A hagstone hangs by the window, and a knife lies beneath the bed. The air is fragrant with the scent of lavender and St. John's wort. The final prayers have been whispered into the stillness. The last silent sign of the cross has been made. The person, having done all they can, pulls up their woolen blanket. They have actively participated in making their world safe. They have faced the darkness not with fear, but with the quiet confidence of ritual. And so we bring our journey to its final, quiet close. We have walked the dark streets of the medieval town. We have explored the strange landscapes of the dreaming mind. And now we have seen the small, gentle rituals used to build a fortress of peace around the vulnerable sleeping body. These acts of placing iron, of hanging herbs, of whispering prayers, all stem from a single, deeply human need, the need to feel safe in the dark. It is an instinct we still share, expressed in our own modern rituals of locking doors and turning on night lights. The chamber is now sealed. The wards are set. The prayers have been whispered, and they have faded into the stillness of the room. All is now safe. All is now still. There are no more stories to tell tonight, no more journeys to take. The library of the past is closing its doors. All that remains is for you to accept the peace that has been prepared. Let go of the day. Let go of the story. And surrender to the deep, untroubled rest you so richly deserve. Sleep well.